Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first Wisdom Seat podcast. My name is Bill Moriarty. I'm one of the board members of the Wisdom Seat. You can check us out at thewisdomseat.org. This podcast is going to be about exploring Buddhist topics and how people bring these teachings alive in their daily life. Today, we're going to be talking to Michael Carroll, a longtime Kagyu Nyingma practitioner and student of Trungpa Rinpoche. Michael is an authorized Kagyu Nyingma lineage teacher, and I'm lucky to have him as my meditation instructor. Today I'm going to ask him about why it's so difficult to describe the awakened state. And since we're going to try to make this podcast experiential, after that we're going to hear some improvised music from Matt DeRodio. Matt DeRodio is also a longtime practitioner in the Kagyu Nyingma lineage, a student of Trungpa Rinpoche, and the co-founder of the Wisdom Seat. And please reach out to us if you have any topics you'd like to explore. Okay, hi Michael. So, why is it so hard to describe the awakened state?
Yeah. Well, to describe the awakened state by definition assumes that there's an observer and something being observed, which is impossible from the awakened point of view. Not impossible, of course, there's dualism, but there's something more primary that we're dealing with, which it isn't a matter of observing and describing, it's a matter of expressing and being. So the use of language, by definition, already has kind of woven into it a kind of a strategy on trying to grasp something, where in this case you can't grasp it because it's the very act of grasping that we're talking about, right? But I have to tell you, as you are quite aware, there are great masters who have been able to come pretty damn close. You know, the one that comes to mind right away is Basho, or the poems, the Japanese poems. What's the name of them again? I forget right now. Haiku. You know, that it actually not only points to the awakened state, it expresses and enlivens it in the audience simultaneously. That requires that your realization is pretty stable because you can't fake that. So I think poetry and the arts, generally speaking, are a way to express and enliven the awakened state and transmit it, basically.
Can that be done even if someone doesn't intend to do that?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
are they doing it and they don't know they're doing it?
Sometimes. I think a child does that a lot. Your child comes flying in the room. You have a child, you know.
Oh,
they
yeah.
come flying in the room. They're so fresh, so naive, that their presence galvanizes the love of a parent in such a powerful way that there's nothing other than the immediacy of the moment that reveals something much larger that you can't put your finger on. You can call it love, you can call it whatever you want. So yeah, our ability as human beings to transmit primordial wakefulness is inherent in the fact that we showed up. So it's not, on the one hand, the ability to transmit the awakened state is a very profound ability. On the other hand, it's our heritage. We're hardwired to do it. So on the one hand, it's a big deal. On the other hand, it's not a big deal at all.
Okay, so the idea of someone who's done a lot of practice and who has a stable or fairly stable understanding of the awakened state can choose to transmit that through something they're doing.
That's correct. You can actually choose to transmit the awakened state. That's correct.
What's the difference of transmitting that when you're in physical presence with someone, like you're in the same room, or you're not? You're online at the same time, or you're doing it in poetry where you're not there anymore. You've written something down, someone's reading it later.
Yeah, it's a big topic, you know. And being a student of Trungpa Rinpoche, he was a master at that. So he would create environments So one of the things he said is, the radiation is more important than the radiator. Meaning, a lot of us, we all want to be around the teacher, right? We all want to be around the teacher, especially when we were young. Of course, getting close to Trump Rinpoche was like a moth to a flame. But nonetheless, Rinpoche was pointing out that the radiation of the teachings is more powerful, not more powerful, but more. He was suggesting that we relate with the radiation more than the radiator. Of course, we all love them. For me personally, I wanted to be around him, and I enjoyed whenever I was around him, though it was always a little scary. But the vast majority of my life was spent not around him at all.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue was he created environments in which things were, the awakened state was transmitted, or at least nourished or held and cultivated. So, you go into the shrine rooms at Rinpoche, you know what they're like. They're very distinctive. Your mind stops. There's a sense of expansiveness, flower arrangement, they're kind of simple yet elegant, these kinds of things. So, yeah, the ability to create environments, and he went to great lengths training us in object arrangement and all this kind of stuff that actually provokes glimpses of our purity, of our basic wisdom, goodness, is definitely part of our tradition.
Okay. So when they said Shakyamuni Buddha had 84,000 ways of teaching, is this some of those they wouldn't have been written, but some of those were transmitted by describing, and maybe a lot of these or some of these are not transmitted by speaking, describing?
I think so. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. I hate to hopefully your audience doesn't hear me as like, oh yeah, I know the answer. I'm just telling you my experience. And I have studied. I have a degree in philosophy and theology and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like I'm just not somewhat trained, but nonetheless, this is my opinion. You may want to go and hear from a real master or a real teacher, this kind of thing. Anyway, I think when they say that the Buddha was teaching in 84,000 different ways, they're speaking more about the variety of mindsets that the Buddha needs to engage versus the number of hands that Avalokiteshvara has. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. So many of us, our talents, our confusion, our heartbreaks, our sadnesses, our playfulness, it's also intimate and unique, that the teachings by definition are so agile, they adapt to the needs of the student. So one student, like myself, needs to be hit with really hard sticks, just to get my attention, right? Whereas other students, may need a cup of soup. So, and those are loosely organized as Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, loosely organized in those buckets of, and from the Vajrayana point of view, you need to actually be taught in the Hinayana, Mahayana first before you get to the Vajrayana. And there's different styles, in the Hinayana, you got to be real straight up, man. Straight up. Stop kidding yourself. Just stop kidding yourself. Get real close to how you're kidding yourself. And deconstruct it, be kind to yourself, and work hard at stop kidding yourself. Mahayana, open a little bit. Notice what's around you. Look at that. It's amazing. And it requires tenderness and kindness. Vajrayana, when did you even think you had a choice? So those are different styles and different skillful means, depending upon who you're involved with.
And is that related to why there are so many terms? That it sounds like a lot of different terms relate to the same thing. Like
Yes.
They all relate to the awakened state. When they're different words, different terms, are they different flavors of describing it?
Yes, I think to a great degree that's the case. When you shunyata, Zen, Mahamudra, enlightenment, these kinds of things, they're all pointing to the same basic experience of wakefulness. And there's another word, wakefulness, whatever that means. However, and this was one of the fun things of really studying with Trungpa Rinpoche, is when you're in there, there's nuances of groundedness in realization, in wakefulness. So there's nuances of how that is grounded. So, for example, and this is where you may want to do a little study on your own, because I'm just doing my best explaining this. Mm-hmm. When you talk about Vajradhatu, there's a word we've heard, Vajradhatu, indestructible body or ground or something. I forget what dhatu means, not body. What it's talking about is that even before the universe decided to wake up, there was something already primordially pure. Prior to us even considering the question, prior to the whole thing, there's something that is already indestructibly pure that actually informs the Dharma Dhatu and the Sambhogakaya and then the Niramanakaya and blah, 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 all these are point to subtle elements of grounded indestructibility of the awakened state. And to some degree, it's interesting to explore them because it gives you a nuanced insight into how further you can relax. On the other hand, they're kind of irrelevant.
When do we find out what that is? You said
what is?
Even before decided to wake up.
Well, you can glimpse it. You can notice. I love reading physics because, not that I'm it's 90% of it's over my head, but I get little tidbits here and there that there nothing exists. Everyone knows now nothing exists. Mm-hmm. They also know that there's no time. So nothing was before and nothing's after. So there's now we're into language problems, but I'll just say this.
Well, that's how we started.
Right. There's something that is indestructibly real that has nothing to do with time, has nothing to do with distance, has nothing to do with existence. Now, back when I was a Christian, which I loved and still contemplate myself quite a lot, one would go, that's God. There is this thing, God. And it's indescribable, and it's that's Vajradhatu. So you can glimpse that, oh my God, there's something so big. You remember when you were a kid, you would go, how big is the universe? Did something happen, did something happen before? If you go to the edge of the universe, can you go further? Those kinds of questions, right? Mm-hmm. That's where we're in, is that there is something indestructibly pure that one can glimpse. And I do, in my mind, believe it speaks to the subtleties of how far you can relax as an awakened person. So when you meet people like Dujam Rinpoche or Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche or Trungpa Rinpoche, they've understood that you can relax that big, so to speak.
So that glimpse, that's the glimpse of the awakened state?
No, it doesn't have to be so philosophical. There was a lot of philosophy there. Mm-hmm. The glimpsing of the awakened state is very personal, it's very intimate. It can't be otherwise. We all think that, when you become enlightened, man, it's like a big deal. It's like Trungpa Rinpoche said, when you become enlightened, it's confused mind's final disappointment. You know that. It's great. Because the issue is the vastness of shunyata, or the vastness of emptiness, the vastness of that, that things are luminously awake yet ungraspable. And the vastness of that can only be experienced as intimacy. Can only be experienced as a Bill Moriarty.
Mm.
So it's in the discovery that the intimacy of your life is vast. Making a cup of tea. That's why Zen is so beautiful. You're just making a cup of tea. Before I was enlightened, I chopped wood, carried water. After I became enlightened, I chopped wood and carried water. Because the intimacy of being is primordial purity at its kind of most perfect expression. So that you don't have to look far. You don't have to go very far.
Do you want to play any harmonica?
Right now?
Yeah. Is there? Do you make it up as you go?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Can you make up a
Sure.
short little?
Hang on. Let me get one. I always carry them in my pack.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've played.